What's going on, guys, and welcome back to part 2 of our bowl preview. Today, I brought in Steven. He is a sports gambler and an expert on...
Self-proclaimed expert.
Yeah, that's right. A sports expert, and we are going to be going over 11 games today. Going to try to keep this video around 10 to 15 minutes. So, without further ado, let's just go ahead and get started. So on December 22nd, we have the Birmingham Bowl. Memphis opening up as 4.5-point favorites versus Wake Forest.
Yeah, I really like Memphis in this game. I like them by a lot more than 4.5, to be honest. I'm thinking somewhere probably around 8 to 10 range. They have second in FBS rusher, Darrell Henderson. He's got 1,900 plus yards, 22 touchdowns. He leads the FBS in all-purpose yards. They average 285 rushing yards a game. I know Wake Forest is coming off that big win over Duke, by 51 or 52 points. They've hit 50 points in 4 of their last 5 games. But their defense is very suspect, especially their rush defense. I think they're 90th or 91st in the country. So I like Memphis.
Yeah, I got to agree with you here. But my big question on this one is, how does Memphis respond after that tough loss in the AAC championship game, where they were up by 14 points to the undefeated UCF Knights, and let that freshman quarterback, Mack, come back and beat them ultimately by 14.
That was a bad loss for Memphis. You're up by 14 going into half. I mean, that's the story of Memphis the last couple of years. Just can't seem to beat UCF. Luckily, they're playing Wake Forest in this one. So I'm going to take Memphis this one probably by somewhere around 7 or 8.
Yeah, I got to imagine it's going to be by more than 4.5.
Yep, I agree.
All right, moving on to the Armed Forces Bowl between Houston and Army. Kind of funny that we actually have a military-affiliated team in this bowl, and Army is favored by 3 points.
Yeah, and I don't understand that line by Vegas, to be honest. Houston's going to be without their starting quarterback. They're going to be without Ed Oliver, their starting defensive tackle, their best defensive tackle, who said he's going to skip this game for the draft. Not to mention they're missing 4 other linemen that have started at some point in the season. They're 97th in the rush defense category. I don't understand why the line's only 3 here. I really like Army in this game, kind of similar to the Memphis game.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a defense as bad as giving up almost 200 yards a game, getting a triple option team for your bowl pick is not good. And starting quarterback Derek King is questionable for that game. We don't know if he's going to play or not. And I just feel like Army's going to be way too much for them. They're riding a 7-game winning streak, and I think they're going to extend it to 8 games when they play Navy this weekend.
Yeah, I think the triple option is going to be way too much for Houston to defend.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. Give me Army pretty big in this one.
I agree.
All right, moving on to the Dollar General Bowl, featuring Buffalo and Troy. And Buffalo is opened as 4-point favorites, and now they've shrunk to 2.5. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I don't really understand why that line is moving in the favor towards Troy, to be honest. I mean, Buffalo's coming off a great season, the best season they've had in their football history program. They've got 10 wins. They have 2 running backs who get over 800 yards on the season. They have the 19th best pass defense in the country. They're coming off the conference championship loss, obviously, to Northern Illinois there by 1 point. I think a lot of people are putting Troy's win in Nebraska heavy on their betting list, which I just don't understand because Nebraska's not good, as we've seen.
Yeah, no, I don't get this one. But Buffalo just has a really good pass defense, and Troy I don't think that they have what it takes to beat Buffalo, who has been so hot and lost by a point,
just 1 point
in that MAC championship game.
Yeah.
I have to agree with you on this one. I think Buffalo's going to win it.
I think they cover that 2.5.
All right, moving on to the Hawaii Bowl, featuring Hawaii as 1.5-point favorites over Louisiana Tech. And like I mentioned in my previous video, this is kind of unfortunate for Hawaii, such as South Florida, having to play a bowl in Tampa. Hawaii doesn't get to leave the islands here.
Yeah, it's pretty unfortunate for any team that has to travel to Hawaii as well. Obviously, if you don't play in that conference, you're not used to that kind of travel. So it's kind of a downer for both teams. I like Hawaii in this game. It's a home game. They're favored by 1.5 points. They have a top 10 passing offense in the country. Cole McDonald's playing pretty well. They're finished the season there with those 2 wins. I like Hawaii in this one to cover.
Yeah, I think this is one of those lackluster games starting at 9:30 Central Time with 2 teams who finished the season in not good terms.
Yeah, pretty bad shape.
Yeah, so Louisiana Tech has lost 3 of 4. And
by an average of almost 20 points a game.
By an average of almost 20 points a game, which is pretty bad. And the number that sticks out to me here is they might have the 33rd total defense, but they forced 19 turnovers, but turned the ball over 16 times for a +3 turnover margin. I don't think that Louisiana Tech can make that going from Central Time all the way out there to Hawaii, which is a several-hour difference, and somehow win this game.
Yeah, I think the one bright spot here for Louisiana Tech is going to be watching Jalen Ferguson. You know, he's coming in with 15 sacks, 23.5 tackles for loss, first-round talent. So if you're looking for a reason to watch, that's a pretty good reason. Other than that, I think this one's going to be a pretty boring football game, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So moving on to December 26th, the First Responders Bowl featuring Boston College and Boise State. And I like this matchup. Boise State opening as 3-point favorites.
Yeah, I like Boise State in this game. Obviously, they're coming off that loss to Fresno State. They beat them earlier in the year, and I think most people know how hard it is to beat the same team twice in a year. They took them to overtime, walked out there with a loss. Unfortunately, they have a pretty big win against Utah State. I like Boise State in this one to cover the 3 points.
Yeah, I agree with you on this one. A tough loss to Fresno State, especially. But, I mean, you know what they say. It's so hard to beat a team twice in one season.
So hard.
And but you have good wins against Utah State, which was 10-2 to finish the season, and Fresno State in the regular season. And I think it is a good matchup of Boise State, who has a really good offense, and Boston College, who's known for their defense. Very tough for Boston College, losing 3 to end the season. But, I mean, you look at who they had to play. Syracuse, Florida State, and Clemson. And, I think the losing continues, unfortunately, for Boston College.
I agree. I like Boise State here to cover the spread.
All right, moving on to the Quick Lane Bowl featuring PJ Flex. Just keep rolling the boat. Minnesota Gophers versus Texas Tech Georgia Tech, and they are 4.5-point favorites in this one.
Yeah, I like Georgia Tech here too, running that triple option. I mean, they're leading the nation in rushing yards per game. They've won 4 of their last 5. The one loss was to Georgia. I don't see how Minnesota can defend that triple option. That's a nasty rush they're going to have to keep up with. I don't think they can do it.
Yeah, I agree with you here, and I just don't put much stock into that that final win against Wisconsin. We know how bad Wisconsin's been this year. And it's so hard to defend a triple option, and also Paul Johnson's retiring.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're going to want to come in and end his tenure there with a big win in a bowl game. And going back to Minnesota, I think their scoring defense is 75th and their rushing defense is 76th. So, like I said, I just don't think Minnesota has the offense to be able to keep up with Georgia Tech here. I think they're going to get a big win for Paul as he retires.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I'll have to agree with you. I mean, we're looking for something to argue about here, right? And so
there's just not a lot here, I don't think. I think Georgia Tech wins.
Yeah, I think so, too. All right, moving on to the Cheez-It Bowl, which can you get a cheesier name for a bowl, which features California, who opened as 2-point favorites versus TCU, but it is now pulled even. Yeah,
this game, to me, it's going to be a snooze fest. I think you're looking at 2 of the worst offenses in the country. California comes in, I think, 110th or somewhere around there. TCU is 90th or 95th. So the offenses have just been abysmal. TCU's on their 3rd-string quarterback right now after the first 2 went down with some injuries. I like Cal here. I like TCU. I think Cal is going to win it in a close one. Just because they've played some tougher opponents. They got big wins over USC and Washington, so they're a little more battle-tested. So I think Cal squeaks by here with a win in a low-scoring game.
Well, see, I'm going to disagree with you here. Even on their 3rd-string quarterback, I'm going to go with the team that beat Iowa State earlier in the season. They're going to show up, and they're going to put it on Cal. I think it'll be a close game. It'll be an ugly game.
Yeah.
I think both teams, the ball's going to get turned over an awful lot.
I think so. I think we're looking at probably a 4 or 5 turnover game.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you there.
Yeah.
But I want to pick TCU in this game for no reason other than to just argue with you.
It's going to be a coin flip, but I think Cal squeaks by with a win.
All right, moving on to the December 27th Independence Bowl, where we have Jeff Collins' Temple Olympus 3-point favorites versus Duke. Got to give a shout out to Jeff Collins, former defensive coordinator at Florida, and I'm going to go ahead and let you know Temple wins this game by more than 3.
Yeah, I don't understand this line here. The only reason I'm thinking it's that low is because we don't know if Anthony Russo is going to be playing. In my mind, I don't think that's going to make a huge difference. I mean, they just beat UCF by 10 without him. They have a top 10 running back in Raquel Armstead. He's 10th in the FBS in touchdowns and 11th in yards per game. And then on the other side of the ball, Duke has the 116th rush defense in the country. So I don't understand that line. I think Temple's going to win by at least a touchdown. Like I said, I'm pretty high on Temple here.
Yeah, I got to agree with you here. They play good team defense. Jeff Collins always has his guys ready to go. I think that they run the ball effectively, even without Russo. They pick it up here.
Yeah, I mean they're 6-1 in their last 7 with that one loss coming to undefeated UCF. So,
yeah, and I got to say that losing to Wake Forest in the fashion that you did for Duke at the end of the season was just appalling, and I just don't know how you recover from that.
Yeah, I don't see them keeping this one close.
I agree with you there.
Temple big here.
Yeah. All right, moving on to a matchup that you were talking to me before the show about the Pinstripe Bowl featuring Miami, who opens as, I think, a comically 4-point favorite over Wisconsin. Yeah. What do you think in this one?
I don't really like that line. The only thing I can see here, them as a favorite, is because of their defense. They have the number 2 total defense in the country, number 1 pass defense, number 24th rush defense. But even with all that, Wisconsin's coming in with Jonathan Taylor, the leading rusher, almost 2,000 yards, 15 touchdowns. I think Wisconsin's going to win this one outright. They're playing up in Yankee Stadium, so it's going to be an outdoor cold weather game. And we all know that teams from Miami typically don't do well in the cold. So I don't see Miami winning, let alone covering the spread.
Yeah, I think it's going to turn out a lot like the Orange Bowl did last year between these two teams, and boy, how the mighty have fallen. You go from playing in a New Year's Six Bowl in the Orange Bowl to now playing in Yankee Stadium, and I got to say, at least we won't have to witness another team with those terrible pinstripe football jerseys.
Yeah, I agree. I like Wisconsin in this one. I don't understand that spread.
All right, moving on to the Academy Sports Texas Bowl, where I'm really high on this Vanderbilt team playing Baylor. They open as 4-point favorites here.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that one. Vanderbilt's pretty battle-tested. They played a lot of tough opponents this year. Tough loss to Notre Dame. Coughed it up in the second half to Florida. Tough games against Mizzou and Kentucky. Baylor, they don't have much going for them on the season. They had to win the last 2 to get in, to be bowl eligible. I like Vanderbilt. I'm high on them. Keshawn Vaughn's averaging almost 7 yards a carry. I think Vanderbilt covers that spread.
Yeah, I mean, for a Vanderbilt team to put up 400 yards a game, that's impressive.
Yeah.
And it's Kyle Shermer's, the quarterback swan song here.
Yeah.
It's a senior season. He won't be back next year. He already has 2,800 yards on the season. I think he gets a few more touchdowns, and he eclipses that 3,000-yard mark.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I think Vanderbilt covers pretty big.
All right, moving on to our last bowl of Part 2 is on December 28th, the Music City Bowl, featuring Auburn, which they got to be disappointed about this one going against Purdue in Nashville. They're opening as 4-point favorites.
Yeah, I don't really like that line. I like Purdue in this game, to be honest with you. I mean, Auburn, one word to sum them up this year is disappointing.
To say the least.
To say the least. They came in the preseason ranked in the top 10. A lot of people were really high on Auburn. And, they just choked all year. They didn't do anything. Jared Stidham, just not a very good year. I think 13 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. They had a really bad loss at home to Tennessee this year. Purdue has a couple big wins. Obviously, that shellacking over Ohio State. They beat Iowa. It always plays tough. So I really like Purdue in this game.
Yeah, I got to agree with you here. I think they run the ball effectively. Even though they've lost 3 out of the last 5, finished the season maybe not on the note that they wanted to, especially after that Ohio State win. But, I mean, Gus Malzahn's only 1-4 in bowl games.
Yeah.
And that one win came in the Birmingham Bowl.
Yeah, and it's kind of like last year, the same situation for Auburn. You know, they weren't really motivated last year when they played UCF. And I think it's going to be a lot of the same this year. They're not really going to be excited to be in this bowl game, whereas Purdue is going to be looking to win back-to-back bowl games. So I really like Purdue here.
Yeah, I like Purdue as well. They're going to win. I think they'll win outright for sure.
I agree.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. We're going to be doing part 3. Beecher will be with us for the rest of our bowl previews. We're going to be doing 11 more bowls in part 3, and then we're going to do the New Year's Six Bowl. And depending on how long those take, we might split out the playoffs into their own video and also preview who we think is going to be in the national championship and also preview that game. Go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Beecher.
Thank you.